Hello, in my last video you would have saw that I installed a game on Steam locally on my Chromebook, and that was Prison Architect. It didn't take up much room, it took about 1.15 gigabytes, so it didn't take up too much room. So I put that onto my local storage and that game played quite easily. But that game doesn't actually take up much processing power, so I wanted to see whether Steam is, a couple of years ago it wasn't that great, it couldn't even play Prison Architect a couple of years ago, but it could play Prison Architect this time. But I wanted to see if it could cope with a better game than Prison Architect. So I tried to install Cities Skylines. The first thing I noticed was that Cities Skylines needed about 15 gigabyte of storage space. I tried to do it on an external hard disk and I spent many hours trying to work it out and I just couldn't get it to work. It's something to do with the security between Chrome OS and how it talks to external hard disks. I tried so many different things and I just couldn't get it to work. So I decided in the end just to increase the storage space for Linux on my local storage on my Chromebox to at least see if it works. I didn't really want to do it because I didn't, just in case there's an issue, but I did it. It did install. The first thing I would say, I did this on my Asus Chromebox 3, which has got an Intel i5 processor. It's got 8 gigabyte of RAM. Yes, sure, it hasn't got a graphics card, so I didn't know whether it would be able to play Cities Skylines. But the first thing I noticed is when it started to install, that's the first real time I actually heard the fans on my Chromebox. Now don't get me wrong, I was like, oh, at last it's eventually using my Intel i5 processor, because most of the processes you do on a Chromebook don't really need much processing power. It just makes it much quicker having an Intel i5, but it doesn't really use that processing power. So in a way I was that's quite good. But as it was getting further into the install, this fan was going even faster. I was getting a bit concerned. I was like, I hope this doesn't break my Chromebox. But it did eventually install the game. Now, when it comes to playing the game, it loaded up the game all okay, and I had loaded games from where I played it on at GeForce Now. But I thought I'd just, instead of trying to load up a massive map, I just thought I'd try and load a brand new game. At first, everything was fine, and then it was going round, and as it was loading, it all started to judder, so the music started to judder, and I was like, oh, here we go. Reminds me of how it was like sometimes on my Microsoft PC when I had a low-powered Microsoft PC. So I left it for a while, but it was getting worse and worse and worse. So essentially, the game just couldn't load. Now, I don't put that down to the processing power, nothing to do with it. I put it down to the storage. So the storage on my Asus Chromebox 3 is eMMC, and it just simply couldn't cope. It couldn't load the game. I tried to load the game. I tried to exit the game, and it wouldn't exit. It just would not respond. In the end, I had to just shut down my computer. I could get on the desktop, so I had to shut down the Chromebox, load it back up, and then uninstall the game. So that shows that you cannot play advanced games on a Chromebook or a Chromebox, definitely if you've got eMMC storage as well. I couldn't work out whether, or not work out, I couldn't get to a stage to see whether the game could play with my Intel i5 processor without a graphics card, because essentially the game just couldn't load, it was juddering, and that's definitely down to the eMMC storage. So if you've got a Chromebox with SSD, perhaps it would work. Who knows? SSD is obviously much faster than eMMC, but I do think that was the issue. So at the moment, unless you've got a SSD Chromebook or a Chromebox, I would suggest if you want to play advanced games, you can't on Steam, because first of all, you have to install it locally. It's impossible, as I've tried, it's impossible to install it on an external hard disk. So the only games you can really play on Steam locally are games that don't take up much processor power, like I said, Prison Architect, them sort of games. But any advanced games, I'd steer clear. So at the moment, if you want to play advanced games on the Chromebook or the Chromebox, I would recommend NVIDIA GeForce Now. I use NVIDIA GeForce Now all the time. The only thing what stops you being able to play is if you haven't got a very good internet connection. So it's best if you can use an Ethernet port, if you've got a Chromebox, or if not, try and be close to your router. So you do need a good internet connection for NVIDIA GeForce Now. But at the moment, if you want to play games on a Chromebook or Chromebox, and it's quite an advanced game, avoid Steam locally. It just doesn't work. It's not worth your effort to do it. And at one stage I thought my Chromebox was going to take off. So yes, definitely just use NVIDIA GeForce Now. Hopefully in the future it will change, but as I said, I do strongly believe the issue was more to do with the eMMC storage, because with eMMC storage it can only read and write to one sector, and SSD can read and write to multiple sectors, and that's why it just couldn't cope. It was definitely down to the storage. Whether it would have been able to play with just the Intel i5 processor, I don't know, because I couldn't get that far. The game would never have loaded. It just wasn't going to happen. So I hope this video helped. If it did, please like and subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.